index a Google Pages deploy if we've already made our 404 page match our index HTML page exactly, because GitHub will use a 404.html file as the 404 page if it's there. Again, we put that in the public directory, same as index.html, so that it just gets copied as is to the build folder during the build process instead of getting transpiled or anything crazy like that. The other issue is that it's not going to make things relative to / note herder. So what we can do is basically tell React Router not to use HTML5 history, which results in URLs that look like this. So they just put everything, they just put our routes after this hash here, which makes it so that that's just an anchor on the page. So the server will say, oh, this is all I need to serve, just / note herder. So it'll serve index.html every time. And then React Router will parse this and figure out what the route is actually supposed to be. So this is totally a workaround for GitHub Pages right now. And the way you do that in app.js, or excuse me, index.js even, instead of using browser router, use hash router. And I suppose to make the point, we could do it not as router, but rather just leave it named hash router. And then use hash router here as your main router component. And I added this one thing here, base name equals / note herder. And that way, it'll use the version that puts that hash at the end of the URL, which eliminates the problem. And it'll stick / note herder at the beginning of each route, which actually might not be necessary once it's using the hash router. But that's okay. Yes to leading /, no to trailing / here. Use hash router for GitHub Pages. Then if you do a yarn deploy, which already runs the build script, then your biggest problem will be the fact that Chrome aggressively caches redirects. Or at least that's my problem, because my GitHub Pages URL redirects to Fretless.com. But yours may not. So you may just have to do a hard refresh once you get there, because it will use the version that didn't have this change we just made. So go to your GitHub Pages site and do a hard refresh by holding Shift when you click refresh. And hopefully your URLs start looking like this with the hash in it. So if I click this and go back to blank note, I get hash / note herder / notes. Click on one of these, and you get the specific note. And here's the important part. Copy this URL and go straight there. And it does the right thing. So we fixed routing on GitHub Pages. And it wasn't too hard. Just had to know what to do. Now we also have a problem with our Firebase deploy. The problem is, because we have previously deployed to GitHub Pages, we told it, when you generate the static HTML, hard code the path to our HTML or our CSS and JavaScript files using the value that we find in package.json under homepage, because this is necessary for GitHub Pages. But this line here, this homepage line, breaks Firebase hosting. So if you want to deploy to Firebase, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to deploy both places anyway. One or the other is fine. But if we get rid of that homepage line and then do a Firebase deploy, then it won't hard code a path that isn't valid. We might have to run I don't think this runs build automatically, so I may have to manually build first. Let's go to our Firebase hosting site. Yeah, still broken. So you do have to do this in 2 steps. Yarn build, then Firebase deploy. Oh, now I have my the wrong path. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. Now it works. Now for Firebase, we shouldn't need to use hash routing, so we can change our router back in index.js. And instead of having to do yarn deploy, Firebase deploy, we could also change our package.json to change our deploy script. Since we're not using GitHub Pages anymore, we could take GitHub Pages out as a dependency, and our deploys should be different here. Now, npm run build, we still want to do that before we deploy every time. And this time, instead of running ghpages-d-build, we probably want to run Firebase deploy, right? So we should probably add the Firebase tools to our dev dependencies. Do you remember what the equivalent of save dev is in Yarn? Well, that's yeah, for dev. Yarn add dev. It's probably yarn add dev. dash dev. So just as we added GitHub Pages as a dev dependency before, we can go ahead and add yarn add -- dev Firebase tools, Firebase tools. That way the deploy script will work for everyone who downloads it. Yeah, I made changes here. Crap. Don't save. Load package JSON again. There you go. Firebase tools. Now I'm going to take GH pages out, change my deploy script to Firebase deploy. Very good. So now we ought to be able to just run yarn deploy. And it will do a build, and it will deploy it. And what we're expecting to change here, I broke this. Here's all Firebase app in. Now, it could be that adding Firebase tools as a dependency actually breaks Firebase. Could that be? That would be a pretty jerk move. What if we yarn remove Firebase tools? Do I have to re-add Firebase then? So instead, probably what you need to do is add in your README that they need to install Firebase tools globally, so that you make sure that other people who download your stuff, because if you add it as a dependency, it apparently breaks Firebase, which is pretty uncool. The big meanies. Anyway, now if I go to noteherder s2 morning firebase.com, it's still using the, it's still caching this because Google is a big jerk. So I'm going to go to, well, heck, I can just do a hard refresh on this. Hard refresh. There we go. Now I see my sign-in page, the ugly one. Sign in with Google. Doop-de-doo. There we go. And now we get the URLs the way we actually like them with the React router. And if we browse straight to one of these notes with the ID, it's actually not loading it up quite right with the current state of the code. Oh, it's still using the hash thing. It's still using the gosh darn hash thing. Despite, it's still, man, it wants to cache this so bad, Chrome. But that does the trick. If I do a hard refresh with the URL that includes the note, it does work. So that really did work with the note in the URL. So that fixes it. So to review, the problem is putting the home page in here with a GitHub Pages URL actually makes it do a build differently, which makes it the wrong URL for deploying to Firebase. So configure your app to do one or the other. You can look through my history for when I've configured it to do both. This is the Firebase version. Firebase is a perfectly good host for our purposes and actually does proper single page app routing. So we like it better for a project like this. So we took that out and we updated our deploy script so that we could still use it. We took the GH Pages dev dependency out. Unfortunately, we can't add Firebase tools as a dev dependency because it breaks everything. Remove GH Pages settings to fix Firebase hosting. And life is good.